Sterling Grogan. Sterling Grogan, who's one of our newer members. And Sterling, I just, you came forward and asked to be part of this group, and I just wanted to have you share your interest in the river with the rest of us. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I've been a resident of northern New Mexico for 46 years. I'm an ecologist. I taught and did research in restoration ecology at UNM for 10 years. I had a small consulting business where I worked all over the world, Tajikistan, Venezuela, Chile, Brazil, that sort of thing, doing what is now called restoration ecology. I was the biologist and planner for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District for 8 years. And that really got my interest started in the Rio Grande. And now I serve on the Los Alamos Citizens Advisory Board. And I'm very concerned about the future of water for Santa Fe. And that's why I am really pleased to join your group and hope I can be of some use.
I'm sure you will be, and I really appreciate your interest in what we're doing. One of the things that's come up recently, we'll talk about this later too, is that we've been at this for a while now. I believe it's our 11th year. And so there's a whole lot of history. And sometimes newer people we don't make newer people as aware of that history as we should. And if we've got some little extra time at the end of the meeting today, I really would like to, maybe Andy, Darren, William, and I, and a few others can talk about how we started, how we got where where we are now. It's been an interesting journey, but again, one of the things that I think is truly the case is that we're at a point of really being able to do something. And that's been the ongoing frustration with all of us, is we've got a lot of great ideas and we've got a lot of great information and we've got research here and research there and we understand the issues, but to actually get something done has been an ongoing frustration. And it is what it is. I mean, it was the nature of the beast in a sense, but I think we're at a point now, and certainly I think we're recognized now as an entity that people appreciate and look toward us. And I think one of the things I want to let people know is that the city has been creating a hydrology report for the lower Santa Fe River. And it's something they've been working on for a while. And yesterday, Bill Schneider, who is the project manager for the pipeline project, asked that at our June meeting, they be able to present that hydrology report at our meeting. And that would be the first time it would be shared with the public. So I'm excited about that. Hydrology is absolutely essential in terms of looking forward and figuring out exactly what's going on. And certainly has to be a component of any planning we do, because it is unique hydrology. It is weird hydrology. It's got stuff that other places don't have. I mean, La Cienega is a perfect example because you can have, one home will have great water. You go 100 yards the other direction, there's no water. And it's just because of those little faults and volcanic faults and all those things that were created as a result of the volcanic activity many, many, many years ago, millions of years ago. So let's go ahead and get started. I know Felicity's going to join us in a while. She's on the phone right now, so she'll be joining us, and look forward to anybody else that wants to come along. Nice to see Tricia Snyder with the Wild Earth Guardians too. Thank you, Tricia. Patricio, always good to see you representing the city.
Hey, hello, Carl. Good to see you, Buzz.
So let's start with the Lower Santa Fe Watershed Stakeholder Involved Planning Process Update. Yes, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to say a part of the reason that I joined when I looked at your agenda is that I am also a member of the River Commission for the city of Santa Fe. And I think it is really important that we all be working together. And I know that most of the people on the River Commission feel that way also. We were supposed to have a meeting today, but for some reason it got canceled because of a quorum. So I don't know when it's going to be rescheduled, but I will mention it to Zoe if at any point you want. We only meet quarterly, unfortunately,
Oh, wow.
since the pandemic. And so if you want to present or talk at some meeting, I don't know when our next meeting is going to be, but it might be advantageous to do it sooner rather than later.
One of the things I think is really important that they understand their role as stakeholders. I mean, that's one of the things, and I'll get into it in a second, but my view of this planning process is that we reach as many stakeholders as we can. Make sure everybody is aware of what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. And certainly the River Commission, and it's really that there's been that kind of separation because as I think we all realize, it's once you get to the wastewater treatment plant, it's at the end of the river. And so
At the end of the river.
I know it's not, but sometimes that's what we see in a sense from
Right, and
other.
it's something in the 5 years, 6 years that I've been on the River Commission that I have tried to represent as the lower Santa Fe River continuously. And I think it's really important that there's more involvement from the traditional communities and especially La Cienega.
Certainly appreciate that.
So I just wanted to let you know that information. So I'm happy to just listen in and thank you very much for everybody and all the work you're all doing.
So I'll proceed with the update on the planning process. It's been pretty interesting.
Sorry, Carl, just one quick comment to Commissioner Anna Henson. I just did want to mention I was a little disappointed that about that meeting as well being canceled. We had a couple of really nice hydrographs prepared to present, and so I'm looking forward to get the opportunity to present those to the group. And as soon as I hear anything on the next scheduled meeting, I'll send the invite to the group.
Thank you, Patricio. Appreciate that. Cool. So the planning process, which is what we're going to be doing for the next year or so, maybe longer, we'll see. When Angela Bean left the county, the project basically kind of got dropped. It just didn't have anybody from the county providing the attention it needed to kind of keep things moving along. So at one point we asked John Dupuy, the utility director, if we couldn't take over that process. And so that's what we have done now. And it's just, we're at a very beginning phase of this because it just takes a while sometimes to get things from the county. And it's going to begin with a review of the RFP that Lucy Moore put together. Now, Lucy Moore is a facilitator who held 2 Zoom meetings. God, it's what, in October, if I remember correctly. And she gathered information from that and put together a draft RFP. And after a couple of requests, we now have a copy of that RFP. And in the next few days, we'll be scheduling a Zoom meeting to start talking about a process to look at that RFP. And it really is to determine the scope of the planning process, or what we want to, the scope of the project, and also to determine what kind of skills and abilities we want the facilitator who will be guiding this process to have. But to me, it's just really an important moment. And again, one of the things I was talking about earlier is that there's been a kind of a push for a couple of people about us getting paid to do this. And I've thought about that a lot, and I don't think I want to get paid to do this. I think it is something that I think we do because this is something that has been kind of our cause for now 11 years. And it's just something I think we kind of push forward and get done. And I really don't want to get into all of the dynamics about being paid or how to get paid and all that stuff. So I think that we just continue on. But in that regard is, as I said earlier, one of the most important things to me is we ensure that we make this process as transparent as we can, that it's available. Information is available to everybody who wants to look at it, that we provide regular reports to the county commission and city council, or to anybody else that wants to hear what we're doing. And really engage everyone that has an interest in the health of the river. Speaking of which, we sent a letter, Commissioner Hanson, to the, I always get this wrong, All Pueblo Council of Governors, to Mark Mitchell, asking if they would like to inviting them to be part of the process. And that was done a month ago, and we haven't heard back from them, which I just accept that it's just going to take a little bit of time. But we want to make sure that Pueblos have an opportunity to participate. And certainly I would want to provide them regular reports too as to what we're doing, because I think they're an essential element or a part of all that we're doing right now. And so, yeah, Commissioner Hanson.
Have you invited Jason to come to these meetings, or is he on the list from Cochiti?
Always on the list.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I think I have a good working relationship with him. I'm always happy to reach out to him at any time.
Not on a movie set. That's one of the things I found in my experience. He's generally doing a movie somewhere, and it conflicts with his work for the Pueblo. But yeah, he's a great guy. He's actually been to a couple meetings, but it's been a while. And we also, in addition to contacting Mark Mitchell, who's the chair of the All Pueblo Council of Governors, we sent individual letters to the governors of Tesuque, Cochiti, Powaki, and Kewa, or Santo Domingo. And so again, I'm not, having worked with the Pueblo before, I don't take this as any kind of insult or that they don't want to be involved. I think that their process is different, and it takes them sometimes a little bit longer to engage, and that's understandable and fine. So they're going to be many parts.
Just keep at it. Just keep sending them the information. Keep inviting them. That's all I can do at the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. And I think it would also be good if they were considered one of the stakeholders.
Anyway,
Okay.
there's a comment. Anyway, one of the things that
We can have a conversation offline.
yes.
I am the president at the moment.
Interesting. Anyway, so one of the things I found out is we, the La Cienega Valley Association, I'm no longer president, Camilo Bustamante is the president, but one of our members is Jeff Montoya, and it turns out he's on the legislative committee of the All Pueblo Council of Governors. So I think I've got a little bit of an inside now who's going to keep me posted on what's going on. Really good guy, and someone I feel very comfortable with talking to. So that's going to be happening with that. But one of the things I've been thinking about, and I wonder if there's any expertise in our group, is that in some instances, it might be beneficial to use surveys as a way to gather information. And so again, this is just something I've been thinking about, and certainly something that our group, there's going to be kind of a core group that's going to be, and I kind of identified people that have already kind of stood up and wanted to be part of what we're doing. And it includes the community leaders and different members of the collaborative, different members of the coalition. But I think it's a pretty solid group of folks that really are kind of the worker bees for all the other things. Again, we'll keep people constantly informed and aware of what's going on. but there is a core group that really is committed to working on this, and we'll start with the review and of the RFP that Lucy Moore put together, and then come up with our own RFP for everybody to look at and finalize and figure out, and then that will get posted, and we'll hire a facilitator, and we'll really start the planning process at that point. But in anticipation of that, I think it's really important that we identify the different stakeholder groups and start to kind of not classify them, but to say, okay, we got environmentalists over here, we've got the ASECU people over here, we've got the community leaders over here, and really as an opportunity to have each one of them express their own concerns and issues with the planning process. So, and just a quick update, I did this earlier, is that the city has kind of backed off of the push to get for their application for return flow credits. They're not pushing that at all right now. And the other thing is we've not, and Tricia, you can correct me, but we still don't have the NEPA report. Is that true, Tricia?
That's true. Yeah, I've been checking their website, which is where it will be published when it is available. I think these NEPA processes, I'm just going to post this here in case anyone wants to take a look. These NEPA processes often take longer than their initial timeline, but the initial timeline that they had said was they would have a draft out by February and have the final EA by March. And we haven't even seen a draft yet. So they're pretty far behind on their own timeline. I don't know if that is related to the city slowing down the OSE permit application. I don't have any information on that, so.
Carl, everything, any NEPA project or any NEPA thing has to go through Washington, DC and BLM headquarters, and everything is backed up at the moment, as far as I know. That's what I'm hearing continually. That's one of the cases. I do want to also say that I know that John is working on trying to hire somebody to take Angelique's place. So I don't know when that will happen, but you know, that would be a benefit to this group also.
Yeah, it is a benefit, but this is, you know, I was talking about this before we started the meeting. One of the challenges we have as community activists, in a sense, is that the changes in county staff or city staff always mean that we have to go through the whole process of kind of educating people again and getting them up to speed. It's just like you've got a new county manager, you know, and obviously you pick someone who is aware of things, and so there's not that learning curve. And so in terms of what we're doing, we welcome the new person, but we really need to be able to educate them as quickly as we can in terms of what we're doing and what our goals are and what our intent are. And I think there are a number of resources we need to consider in this process. Obviously, I think the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources may be a resource for us at some point. I do think that biohabitats, Erin English is a real potential. And I talked to her informally, and she's very interested in what we're doing and wants to be involved on some level. Those are the kinds of things that we've been able to develop over the years, that we really do have resources and knowledgeable people. I mean, we got, what's his name, Patrick with the New Mexico Environment Department, who does water quality stuff.
You're talking about Longmire?
Yes, Patrick Longmire, the fiddle player, yes. He's in a band, but yeah, used to be anyway. Pretty good one too. But yeah, so these are the kinds of things that we can draw people in, and having people like Sterling all of a sudden involved, that's a whole element that we didn't have before, is that kind of knowledge and expertise. And so I think we just kind of grow as an organization and as a group, and try to figure some of this stuff out as we move forward. So I'm kind of rambling, and in all honesty, I kind of patched this agenda together today. I've been doing a whole bunch of other things and expecting a visit from my daughter and granddaughter today. So that's obviously one of those things coming down from Washington. So I'm very excited about that. But that means all those kinds of getting the house straightened up and all those kind of things. So any comments on the stakeholder planning process? It's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of effort. One of the things I think we will be talking about is how we make decisions, how often we meet. And if you know anything about the collaborative, we've never done anything without consensus. We've never had to vote on any issue. We've always been able to talk about things and get things to a point where we all agree that it's okay to go forward. And we have done a lot of things over the years, interesting things. So, all right. Any other questions? I'm going to be stumbling a little bit this morning. Apologize about that. So stakeholder groups, I would really like to start looking at that and really sitting down. Okay, what are our stakeholder groups? The city is a stakeholder group to me. The county is a stakeholder group. They have to be represented somehow, or at least informed and being able to participate on some level. We've got the community organizations, we've got the Asaki Association, and I'll start putting this down in writing so we have something to refer to. The public, just in general, public should have an opportunity to be able to participate. The Santa Fe River Commission is a stakeholder. BLM, Forest Service. Yeah, exactly. And there's one of the things we need to develop is a way to communicate with these folks. So I would ask for any suggestions on how best to do that. William, you got any ideas?
I just noticed that Darren put in contacting the community organizations and register organizations countywide. And the county is starting, in their growth management planning department is starting through Lucy Foma. And there's two other people that she's working with, Alexander somebody, and apologies to not knowing their names, but they're starting what we were calling the COCO up, community or Congreso of Community Organizations. And Dennis Kurtz from San Marcos District that took over from Walter Wade, he and I have been bugging them to do this. And then I connected with Camila Bustamante and Lynn Pickard of Tasuki Traditional Historic Community to really say, well, we need this to preserve our way of life, basically, because, if we don't get support from the county, basically the city of Santa Fe is going to run over us. Apologies to Patricio, but what we need is we don't want to reinvent the wheel every time we're doing a particular neighborhood organization effort or that type of thing. So the COCO is an opportunity to share techniques, to do outreach and that type of thing. So they've come out with a newsletter. They were saying that they were having a hell of a time getting anyone north of Santa Fe to participate, the Poake Valley and everything. So I sent a email out to our United Communities of Santa Fe County partners that we had up there and said, this is the real thing. We need you to participate. So I'm hopeful that this particular organization will help in any type of outreach. you know, and for our group, you know, for Santa Fe River Traditional I can't name it, Communities Collaborative, you know, I think, you know, maybe we can push this agenda also.
No, that's the kind of group we'd like to make a presentation to and get it involved in whatever way we can. And certainly make them aware of what we're doing.
I think first off, it's super important to get just there's a summary, a list of all the COs and ROs and current at least contact information. And I think, yeah, Lucy Foma would probably be the one that has it right at her fingertips. And you'd be surprised, like William's saying, not to reinvent the wheel, right? Because all the spokes are right there, and you have your stakeholders already separated out. Maybe the biggest thing for us is to do, you know, this is an idea I picked up recently. We have to be very clear-eyed in separating affinity groups from things like traditional communities, sovereign entities,
right.
And make sure that our approach is appropriate for each of those little subdivisions, right? Especially in maintaining consensus and communication, but really important to consider standing. And I think that gets to where we get the communities involved, especially traditional communities with the appropriate standing, and acequias, so that we can work over all the cross-jurisdictional challenges that, you know, our landscape is riddled with.
William?
So also I would add to Darren's thing about like mutual domestics. I think we have 54 in Santa Fe County, and I think we had about 45 of them participating in United Communities of Santa Fe County. We had about 100, I think it was 98 different entities that were participating. Paul White had asked me to count them up the other day, so I did. But you know, and we were focused on the growth management plan, and later the county's sustainable land development code. And you know, we pretty active until 2018. So you know, and we were basically just waiting for the COCO to appear. There was a person, I think in Las Campanas, there was a couple of people in Las Campanas that they call it the Northwest Communities or something like that, group that they just set up. And they were saying, well, you know, we're so different. Each one of our neighborhoods are so different. And how can we ever work together? And so I gave her the background of United Communities, and we were all different. But then as we started meeting together, we realized that we had so many things that were very similar, and that the only way we were going to achieve anything is to unite. So
I hope it's time to do that. I hope that pulls off. Please let us know. Obviously, I'm not the president of La Cienega Valley Association anymore, but obviously I'd be very interested in doing whatever I can. And it's one of those things, you know,
I'll contact Lucy Foma and say that we had this meeting. We want to get, you know, Carl wants to get your email list, and let's go forward.
cool. That's an excellent contact. Thank you. Anything else? So, La Cieneguilla well testing. I think we should start this. And I had an informal conversation with Bill Schneider yesterday. And I've heard some reports, but I don't have any documentation to support it, that people are getting sick. And so I don't know what that means yet. I need to do more research. It was a kind of a casual conversation. Do you have anything like that down in La Bajada, Darren? Any issues? You're muted.
No, I haven't heard any problems with our domestic water. We haven't had access challenged for our sampling lately for that. we're having some hiccups with the irrigation system, but no reports of illness. But we treat, once we get into our holding tank for the village.
Okay, see, the concern I think we have is that whole wetlands area and the concentration of nutrients there, and whether over 25 years and I see Sterling shaking his head saying, yeah, you're probably right. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to remind Darren and you, Carl, too, of the report we got out though of the mine that is not being cleaned up, and they can't clean it up. So the
Why don't you
uranium pollution.
Provide more detail about that, Andy, in terms of where it's located.
Well, Darren camped there about what, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Darren, are you still glowing?
Yeah, and I grew up eating bluegill and catfish and crappie and frog legs out of there too. And hopefully that contributes to our family's history of longevity. So, but before it got completely bulldozed in, but yeah, I think there's probably still some presence in tailings there. When we have our water sampled, we're not beyond federally acceptable limits for uranium. Our wells all have recordable levels of uranium in there too, just because of the geology in the vicinity. But no, I don't know if it needs further remediation or not. I don't think it's posing an immediate hazard. I think it's probably posing a good contract opportunity for an SBS or an environmental remediation firm. And so maybe that's why there's interest in it, because it's easily measurable and, public lands and this type of thing. And there's an opportunity there for an environmental remediation entrepreneur. Yeah, but I don't see it having, like I say, typical impacts where you would expect to see high groupings of cancer, for instance, or this type of thing. It's fortunately not posed itself in a really small population too. Remember, there's only seasonally at a maximum maybe 50, 60 people in this village, generally only about 40.
Well,
You were shaking your head, and do you have any comments on this?
who?
Who is that?
Yeah, do you have any comments on this? You seem to be nodding your head going, yes.
Well, there is now a new pot of money for uranium mine remediation. And I'm wondering if it's worthwhile to pursue that. I don't know. It would be the Energy, Minerals and Natural Resources Department, I believe. But if there is, in fact, I'm not aware of it. I'd like to know where the mine is located.
Gary, can you let them know?
Sure, that's okay. So from the mouth or the bocas of the Cañada, okay, where the La Bajada escarpment drops off and opens into the La Majada Mesa, go about 2 miles up there, and then up to the northern rim of the Cañada is an old pit mine. Was in before the 50s was a copper and silver mine, and later on, when uranium was discovered, was determined to be too water intensive to be able to extract at a sufficient profit, and so was left sort of abandoned. And then, of course, was overgrown and served as a little estuary, a side marsh off of the course of the Santa Fe River there. Not to mention having hit groundwater in the pit itself. So it was an interesting feature.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yesterday I was on a call with NACO, and one of the topics for our July annual meeting is water. And they were really concerned about how to remove nutrients and all kinds of other things out of water. And one of the commissioners from Florida had this company. He's going to send out the information, but they have created a very interesting process for a number of removing chemicals and things from the water that is coming out of wastewater plants. So once I get that information, I will forward it on. But it was a very, interesting discussion to have lots of commissioners from all over the country talking about the water issues, and we're all kind of facing the same issues of, high level of nutrients and phosphorus and et cetera in the water, and especially from the wastewater plant here in Santa Fe that, needs attention. I'm being kind. So I think that it is important for us to look at those other areas, especially within the county, in ways that we can engage these resources. So I just wanted to share that with you, because there are companies out there working on these issues.
That's what Biohabitats does that too. I mean, that's one of the things with the constructed treatment wetlands that they're able, but it's one of those things that has to be maintained on a regular basis. And what's happened with the wetlands, it's never been maintained. And so there is obviously, we believe, a culmination of things in the soil and how far it got into the soil and how far it goes down as it reach groundwater. This is where hydrology would really help us in terms of understanding what's going on in that area. But I think it's come to the point where we really need to pay a little bit more attention to that. And I will follow up with the one thing I heard about someone getting sick and blaming that on well water. And seeing if that's something that needs to be brought to the attention of the powers to be.
We're also, we're working on our metering program in La Cienega at the county. So, that's also happening through sustainability. So you might want to reach out to Jacqueline and, maybe part of this traditional communities. If you consider us a stakeholder, which I think we clearly are, we should have maybe somebody from sustainability who is working on the well issue in La Cienega.
Can you give us an update? Because that's something that our association brought to the forefront. It's now 4 years ago. And it was one of those things that was part of the La Cienega watershed conditions that those homes that went in after 1992, I think, had to have meters on their wells, but no one ever did it. And so now we're trying to play catch up. And so I'm just interested in hearing where that's at now, because I know that it's happening, but I just don't know how it's going to happen.
I think you have to talk to Jacqueline, but it was one of the things that definitely County Manager Miller had put as a priority to work on getting these well meters in. And so she had asked Claudia to work on it. And then when Claudia left, she gave it to Jacqueline. And I believe it might be Adeline or Caitlin who's working on it. I can't answer that, but I know that it is on the list of our priorities, because when we had a strategic planning session, it was listed as one of the issues to work on.
That's good to hear, really is. Now, Commissioner Hanson, do you know whether or not they're going to expand that the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources is doing a well depth monitoring program for La Cienega? Do you know if they're going to expand that beyond? I know that the Bureau is interested in going farther east to check on well depths. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I can't answer that at the moment, but I think maybe inviting Jacqueline or John Dupuy, to the meeting in June would be important. And I don't know who it is in sustainability. I'm having this feeling that it's Adeline and not Jacqueline. So, but Jacqueline is the director, so she could assign it to the right person.
That sounds good. Excellent. Yeah, that monitoring program I think is really important to kind of keep. And I want to put a bug in your ear, Commissioner Hanson, because we know that the Canyoncito pipeline's going in. It was scheduled to be completed this year, at the end of this year, and I'm not sure where it's at exactly. But when that happens, I know that or at least we understand that El Dorado will be taking some of that water to make up, or for their wells basically drying up. And there are 4 wells in the Tesuque Ancha formation that affect the springs in La Cienega. And we've already sent a letter to the El Dorado, El Dorado District, El Dorado Area Water and Sanitation District, asking them to take those 4 wells out of production to be able to help support the springs in La Cienega, which will help support the river over time. And so that's, if you have any opportunity to act on that, we would be most appreciative. Okay.
I will I'll reach out to John, but it is really Hank Hughes and Commissioner Hamilton's district, so they
Okay.
might be more up to date on it.
Okay.
And I do also think that Commissioner Hughes would be interested in, participating in these meetings whenever he's available. But I know things are going forward. We're all aware of those wells that affect the springs and the river and the hydrology in that formation. Dealing with El Dorado has not always been as easy as possible, but it is getting better. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction, because we now are using their lines to wheel water through to Canyoncito.
All right, William.
I understand how important the well monitoring is to La Cienega. But, in Agua Fria, the Village Association, the Cieneguilla Agua Fria Association, and the Agua Fria Well Owners Association have taken the position that they would not accept well monitoring until the adjudication itself was settled. So I mean, that's like our bargaining chip, I would say.
Wow, that brings the OSE into it, obviously, right?
I guess, or well, it could just be a mediation type thing, a negotiation. I mean, that's.
Sorry, William, I missed your part. I had.
Oh, well, I was just saying our 3 entities, the Agua Fria Village Association, the Cieneguilla Agua Fria, and the Agua Fria Well Owners Association, we've taken the position that we will not accept well monitoring until the adjudication is settled. And, because otherwise we have no bargaining chip in it. So.
Makes sense. Andy?
William, is that, when you talk about the adjudication, is this the one that's been filed?
The
20 years?
1971 Henry Anaya et al. Versus City of Santa Fe.
Yeah, and Tricia Snyder, are you aware of that?
I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat that last part?
Go ahead, William.
I'm gonna lose my voice at this rate. So the Agua Fria Village Association, the Cieneguilla Agua Fria, and the Agua Fria Well Owners Association have taken the position that we will not accept well monitoring until the adjudication is settled.
No, that hasn't been something I've been aware of.
And we feel that it's our only method of having leverage over, other entities.
So you want the adjudication of water rights in Lava Fria,
Yeah,
which means, and now Darren, didn't you get the adjudication done in Lava Hada?
yeah, they did. He's gone for some reason.
Disappeared.
Oh,
There he is. He's coming back.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, well, that's was I guess more practically settled in La Bajada by 1981. So, and I was just going to put in the chat, Agua Fria and those associations are not alone. All the acequias that I think La Bajada is probably unique in that. But it didn't happen either without a rift in the community and factions among factions and, dissolution and reformation of the acequia. And these days we have a mutual domestic too. But the important thing, and I'm glad William brings it up because we're talking about having to reestablish the continuity of our collective identity and our collective memory, especially in the Santa Fe River watershed, right? And that this is all kind of Santa Fe River Water Rights 101. So you got to know, Anaya versus PNM et al. Is out there. And there are still many communities that are, that's almost like the modern day 100-year revision of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, as far as many of us are concerned. It's land grant issues and water rights issues rolled up into one that are now being managed by, whatever federal agencies stick their finger in it, but from reclamation all the way to Forest Service to BLM, but more particularly, as it's been done since statehood through the Office of the State Engineer. And so, not having those priorities recognized or having the system being weaponized by larger municipalities against traditional communities that form themselves around their acequias. When you start looking at special districts in New Mexico and you start seeing, how Williams community is organized, how our communities are organized from Cieneguilla all the way down, it's always around the acequia ultimately. And the question is whether that continues to be the political subdivision of the state that was recognized in 1848, or whether it's devolved into something else these days and just been blown by and systematically marginalized. So that's probably, to me, the value of this collaborative was it sustained us in times where all these relationships are somewhat gray because of the lack of adjudication for a lot of these communities. So, and then what happens is we get the next impending crisis coming out of city expansion or uncontrolled growth, and all these communities are put in a defensive posture and have to try and maintain their identity. At the same time, we're actually trying to get something practically done to keep from being just extinguished,
William, go ahead.
Thank you, Darren, for saying that. Henry Anaya was from Agua Fria, and he was 90 when he died 2 years ago. But so the whole adjudication is being kind of, it would have to be run by the grandchildren anymore. But, back in 2009, we had an offer from the Interstate Stream Commission to come to a meeting at the Nancy Rodriguez Community Center and to negotiate our water rights. And we went, and everything was going along well. The city and county were there. Our mutual domestic was there. And then Governor Susana Martinez came in, and she didn't even think she needed a state engineer, and everything was off the table, and we've never recovered from little Susie.
Now, I want to ask, have we identified what water rights need to be adjudicated?
I mean, there's all kinds of wells. I don't know that there's one list, and I contest, surface water rights. I did a paper where we proved 3,300 acre feet annually of irrigation rights. And it's never been forfeited through the state engineer.
So, I mean, we're talking about Lavajada all the way down to, Lavajada all the way up to Agua Fria. Lavajada's taken care of. We got to start at Lavajada, go up, Tres Rios Ranch, the Rael Ranch, Jose Varela Lopez, that area, La Cieneguilla, then up to Agua Fria.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so massive. Who would want to undertake it?
Well, it's one of those things that maybe it's not that massive, but if you look at the number of properties involved, that's not a lot of properties.
Yeah, you have to consider though that our trajectory through time, we've only become, look how long it's taken for this little communities to become unified just for the sake of geographical separation, you know, and you have to drive somewhere. These days, for whatever, for better or for worse, this has proven, although not the most equitable means of communication, but not as good as getting together at the community center, right? But that required effort and a significant carbon footprint, right? But that's the thing is we're only uniting in this common solidarity, always in a defensive posture. And when it gets down to putting us as crabs in a barrel, now it's, well, if I accept 3 acre feet and you stick out for 6, you know, you're not doing what's good for the community. And these kind of discussions where who's going to sell out to them. And then you have the city coming to you and saying, hey, we got a magical water right that trumps everybody from 1706, right? Where, you know, the law of the land at the time was still for preservation of downstream users that were first come, first serve in the settlement and development of those acequia systems, right? So you look at that right, and you got to keep it in the context of how many acequias was it serving, how many parciantes was it serving, how much production was it serving in comparison to the other villages in all the way down the canyon in the breadbasket of the Caja del Rio, right? So this other little communities, although separate, were you know, the cooperative local food supply, local protein supply too from the Caja itself. So and the livestock raised there and the Majada, but that's the tough part is put it into now we're going to separate it between who's got the, like you say, who can focus on it and bring it together against sustained efforts of developers and municipalities that are working for growth and want to be able to present to their constituents year-on-year growth and prosperity, right? So I mean, it's not a new story, right?
Yeah, just for a little memory, there have been times when we have listened to city attorneys basically say they had no obligation to put any water in the river because they had all the water rights. And that is something that has been, I hope, has gone away. Go ahead, William.
And I remember when Marcos Martinez, city attorney, said that if they gave 1 acre foot of water under any settlement, that it would make the city of Santa Fe a ghost town because all these realtors would pull out and blah, blah, blah. And so he took a hard line. But, you know, we've been used to the hard line. When Phil Sosi was the head of the Sangre de Cristo Water Company, and our lead negotiator, Charles Padilla, who's since been deceased, Phil said, I'm from New Jersey, and I was hired by the water utility there to get the mafia out of our water utility. And he said, and I did it. And he said, if you think you locals are gonna scare me off, you have another thing coming. So on one of the occasions, Phil Sosi showed Charles Padilla pictures of his kids at school. And then he brought in 2 linemen that were just huge guys. And he says, I don't hire them to do the work of being a lineman. He said, they're my enforcers.
No way.
And yeah, and he said, you know, I know where your wife is right now. I know where your kids are right now. You better change the way you're voting. And So Charles was, Charles crapped in his pants, and he went to his brother, Bob Padilla, that used to sell the railroad ties. So Bob went in to Phil Sosi and he says, I don't care that you're from New Jersey and that's the way you dealt with the mafia. He said, I'm from Mora. And he said, in Mora, what we do is we shoot you in the head and we throw you in an arroyo and collapse the arroyo on top of you. He said, if you want to play that game, we can. And Phil Sosi backed off.
What year was this?
Geez, in the early 70s. It was right after 1971 it was probably about 74.
Wild times.
Yeah.
New Mexico Justice.
Yeah. And most of the city of Santa Fe water rights from PNM are from the Santa Fe Ring. And, the Santa Fe Ring didn't obtain anything legally.
I always wonder about the El Dorado water rights too, where they came from,
The Sims Ranch, I guess, but, and
a lot of water rights.
yeah, well, they, it's 100,000 acres and they accumulated a number of homesteads that, they used to drive sheep or whatever. I mean, but probably like 1,000 homesteads. And if they each got 3 acre feet, well,
What was the name of the ranch?
Sims, S-I-M, I think it might be 2 M's, S.
Not the Sims family from Albuquerque or from
No,
Albert
no.
Sims.
Or you know who it is? It's Alva Simpson. That's who it is.
Oh,
Alva
gotcha. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
I mean, this history is so old, I've forgotten it.
I want to express a little frustration I have. I serve on the Water Policy Advisory Committee, and one of the things we're looking at is drought and how we can educate our well owners about they need to help with the drought and make sure they're not using more water than they need to, kind of stuff. And then I attend meetings, and Patricio, I'll apologize in advance, Patricio, a little bit, but you get into these meetings and they go through all their calculations and all their things that we're not in a water emergency. We don't need to worry about it. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second, step outside of that city boundary and we've got water issues. And so we're
That's
trying
the
to,
thing that we need to keep at the forefront, is that there is a difference between all this imaginary paper water that they have that they're playing with and wet water. And we just got to keep saying it, because I don't know, like you say, it's bizarre how the message doesn't get through.
they keep banking on the Buckman wells. If the dries out in the river, then we'll be able to use the Buckman wells. Well, you know what that means? It means we're screwed. Anybody that's got wells are going to be impacted for the most part. And so,
But there's legal provisions that the Santa Fe Basin Water Association has on those Buckman wells. I mean, they're claiming 10,000 acre feet there, and the state engineer says you only get 1,000. So I mean, there's history behind that, and like I took Claudia Borchet on because she wanted to pump the Osage well, and because it's they're limited by court order to 25 acre feet a year on that well. And it's a huge well. And Phil Sosi, when he was there, he told us the only reason I drilled the Osage well is to dry out all the wells in Agua Fria so that they would have to be PNM customers. And, at that time, the Santa Fe Basin Water Association was actually called the Agua Fria and Vicinity Well Owners Association. And they took him to task, and they got an injunction, in court for that well not to be pumped. So, I mean, there's a lot of history to all this. And we're being the nice guys. We haven't buried anyone in an arroyo. And going back to 1880, when the dam was first up there, 12 riders from Agua Fria went up there, and 6 of them were armed, and the sheriff went and the city police chief went, and they said, well, you don't want to engage in violence, go back home. And I say, gosh, if we just had 6 more guns.
I hope you're writing down all this history.
Oh yeah,
Really good.
I published a book for the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. I'll put the link in the chat.
Do. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, but in terms of messaging about the drought, it drives me nuts because I'm supposed to go out and tell these well owners, hey, cut out your water use, and they look at me and say, what's the city doing?
Yeah, well,
okay.
the city's doing wonderful. They're down between 8,800 and 8,000 acre feet annually. I mean, the backs of the people, the poor people that do all this conservation, I mean, they do all kinds of wonders to do. And what is really in it for them? Every acre feet they save is given to the next developer out of Texas. I mean, it's really unfair. And I was kicking around, kind of jokingly that, the water consumers ought to have a strike and say, we're gonna, in the night, we're gonna open fire hydrants. We're going to flood our yards without the city seeing it. We're gonna go into public restrooms and open up all the faucets. I mean, unless the consumer is rewarded for their water conservation, it's a lot of work, and especially as you get older. I mean, I'm going with a gallon bucket anytime I run the water for hot water, and then I put it on the plants, or I'll drink that water. I use a wash basin in my, I don't run any water for my toothbrush. It just goes on, and it's a lot of work to do it that way. And one time I was going to a city meeting for the Blue Buffalo apartments. And so I was hustling to get ready for the shower and everything. And I tripped over the bathtub and I almost cracked my skull. I almost killed myself to save a gallon of water. And, I thought, why am I doing it? Really? I mean, just so it can be given to the next developer from Texas. It's almost criminal. And, the people might rise up. So I suggested to Christine Chavez that she have a contest, like have the person with the best water conservation ideas, that you put their name in a hat and you pull out one a month or one a quarter, one a year, and you give them $1,000 off of their water bill, or whatever it is, or have restaurants come in and say, here's come and eat at Tomasita's, come and eat over here for free because you did such a great job of water conservation. And you look at social media and people are complaining about these new apartments, and they're complaining about where's the water coming from. And a general revolt is not that far away. And you can witness it in Christine Chavez's monthly column or weekly column in the Real Estate Guide. She kind of skirted this issue, but, I think it's on her mind. And, it should be.
I think Christine Chavez does an outstanding job, and I think the Water Conservation Committee is outstanding. But what it doesn't address is groundwater. I mean, that's the water basically that's coming off the river that they're conserving, and that's a wonderful thing to do. But we've got to deal with the groundwater issues, which are much more important. I think I've said this before, but you know how many wells there are in San Jose County? 12,000.
Wow.
1,000 of those are in the city, 11,000 are in the county. And I can tell you that it's growing. Andrew Erdman did this really, I'll try and track you down
Yeah.
too, did this really good graphic about the growth of wells in Santa Fe County. They're actually in the city of Santa Fe. Go ahead, Commissioner Hanson.
So right in my neighborhood, because many of you know I live in the city. Right in my neighborhood, there is at least 5 to 10 wells, maybe more. I don't know all the people. I know a number of the houses that have wells. There's probably really 25 to 30, but that's in Casa Alegre alone. And they're not metered and they're not monitored. And, so when the mayor says to me, you need to do something about the wells in the county, you need to do something about the wells in the city.
Absolutely. And that's
Well,
really what we're
two is that one on Osage Avenue that was just drilled about 3 years ago. Like they're building a second story and more. They're almost maximizing their construction on that lot. I mean, there's like no dirt around their house at all. I mean, it's a huge house.
Where's the well on Osage?
There's a
Right
number
there.
of them.
Yeah,
Okay,
There's
got it. All
not
right.
there's not one well
Bunch
on
of them.
Osage. There's
Got it.
probably more than
Oh.
one. There's probably 5 or at least, I know of 2 for sure. And if I know of 2, that means that it's double for sure.
The city well that William Mee referred to earlier, though, is on Aquifer, just east of Frenchies. And it's a.
Yeah, that's the
plot.
Osage well.
Yeah,
And that's, we're talking about private wells.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for helping me understand that. So we got well issues.
plus, we didn't talk about what William Schneider brought forward to our Fairfield Village Association about the groundwater pollution coming down. There's so many old gas stations, so many old dry cleaners that, the city is afraid to pump those wells to the max because then the cone of depression would start sucking in pollution from around it. There's a huge dry cleaner thing at Smith's on Cerrillos Road. I think it was called Aspen Cleaners. And it's now the exercise place, Fitness One or whatever it is. And
It's not Aspen Cleaners because Aspen is still located on Cerrillos up from
okay.
but
it
like
had
right across from the Indian school. But yes, there was a cleaners there that is really seriously affecting them.
it had a dry cleaning fluid recapture system, a big tank. And that was inspected by the Environment Department at least every year. And so then when they remodeled it to be the fitness thing, they pulled up the tank and they noticed the tank was cracked on the bottom. So it had been leaking for 10 years or more. And so the Environment Department drilled 3 wells behind Smith's, and they're doing, it's like aeration. You just, once you bring that dry cleaning fluid up to the atmosphere, it disappears. And that's what they're doing with it. But like the old dry cleaning fluid, if you took an 8-ounce glass of water and put 1 drop of it in there, and then I drank it, I would die almost instantaneously. It's that dangerous. The Baca Street, Schneider said it had 3 feet of gasoline sitting on top of the water because gas floats. And that was in 2018. And now in 2021, they measured it's 4 feet. And so they blame it on P&M because they had these containers to fill their trucks with. And P&M says, oh no, we've remediated all of that. It was the Texaco at Baca Street and Cerrillos Road that's still coming down. And so there's, the city's trying to enforce it on P&M, and well, the environment department saying, well, you didn't clean it up all. So that's, they're just doing friendly negotiations on this, but eventually, someone has to be held responsible for it. And that particular gas, that could flow down to Agua Fria.
There's no mitigation going on right now.
No, well, there's all kinds of monitoring wells there. There's a new neighborhood association that sprung up there. I think they said Barbara Fix was the president. And
one of the members is also a member of the River Commission.
Yeah. So they're trying to keep tabs on it. And as long as there's not a lot of wells in that area that start drawing it in, remediation could be possible.
That's depressing on some level.
Yeah. And then,
it is.
so Bill Schneider said before the city dumps, like, at the Buckman recycling and transfer
Transformation.
station. Yeah, Burt. Before Burt, the city had a number of landfills all throughout Casa Solana, and there's no well monitoring of those. But they have an idea that there is some problems there. But, it may be that the trash that was thrown pre-World War II, pre-1950s, that we really didn't throw a lot of toxic stuff away. We didn't have all these household products to clean toilets, for instance. So it may be kind of safe, but it's not monitored. And, the number of potential pollution sites that the city has under it is about 20. And the new district courthouse, that has not been fully remediated. The well monitoring indicates that there is still pollution coming in from the 4 gas stations around it. It's so scary that, we have to keep the women and children away from hearing all this stuff. What are we gonna do?
Watch out.
I just wanted to wake you guys up.
Thank you, William.
Well said. It's frightening, but at the same time, it's something. Any reporter ever done any?
Yes, the Santa Fe Reporter, I think in November, did a huge thing on this.
Okay. Next thing I wanted to talk about is flood control. I know that sounds like something that may not pertain to stuff, but it's something that's pretty important. Obviously, it was what, 3 years ago? Almost 3 years ago when we had the huge flood come through La Cienega. And it's one of those things like 4 years now. Wow, 4 years ago. Time flies. But it's one of those things where we just kind of sit back, oh, that was a flood, and then all of a sudden we're going to get another one. And I'm wondering if the collaborative should write a letter to the powers to be. It would be the city and county saying, hey, we know that this is going to happen at some point. Can we start looking at ways to, and basically what you try to do is slow the water down. And I think on some level that wetlands has helped in terms of slowing water down, going to La Bajada. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's probably the case. But when we get to the Arroyo Hondo and to the Arroyo Chamizo, there's nothing stopping that. And so it wouldn't be that difficult to do something that would spread that water out as it comes rushing down from the city. Go ahead, William.
So on Arroyo Hondo, and I think it was 2015 or 2014, they had 4 inches of rain in 4 hours. And that made your big flood down in La Cienega.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It may not be raining in La Cienega, and all of a sudden we've got a flood coming through us too. So it's one of those things that we need maybe a way to be more aware of the situation. But again, if we could develop, and it's not that difficult to be able to develop ways, and this is where you put in swales. And Andy, I know that that's almost like the largest adopted Arroyo plan that you could ever have. But it's one of those things that absolutely makes sense. And we'd obviously have to abide by the state engineer limitations in terms of, is that the case with the Arroyo Hondo and Arroyo Chimizo, as it would be on other arroyos, Andy?
Well, yeah, you have Army Corps regulations, and then, of course, any city, county. What I'm thinking of is maybe a good conversation here, and I'll throw it past Commissioner Hanson, is sustainability office, Jacqueline Bean from the county, to talk about that. The city has a stormwater department that could also be invited too, and maybe it'd be good to compare the city stormwater plan with the county plans. That could be something that happened, you know, they're still around.
Okay. That sounds like maybe a next meeting thing.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking again, I'm not completely familiar with the hydrology in the area, but it would seem to me that would help recharge the aquifer if we slow the water down and let it get into the ground, right?
Yeah, well, that's the whole concept with bioretention
adaptive oil.
basins, rain gardens. We just finished putting in some rain gardens on Old Santa Fe Trail and East Alameda. So, yeah.
How expensive are those?
Maury was in charge of those. It was very expensive.
I think it really depends. Our smaller rain gardens that we're trying to do a lot of parking space rain gardens to, trap runoff from parking lots specifically. So those run about 8,000 to 10,000 per spot per one parking space. But the big one on East Alameda that we just finished, which will it can take on a lot more water, is I think about 130,000. So significantly more, but we've got a lot more cool things that we can do there, and it's going to infiltrate a lot more water, and there's a lot of other kind of bioremediation potential happening there. And our partner Reese Baker is, collecting data for his PhD on the bioremediation properties of the white rot fungus that he put in the rain gardens into elm stumps and all of this exciting stuff. So I think for urban stormwater, there's a lot of really exciting potential. I think in the arroyo channels themselves, especially the Chimizos and the Hondo, they're so much bigger that I think, if we can stop some of the runoff from coming off of city, impervious surfaces, that's great. But, the arroyos themselves are also so huge that probably we'll have to do a lot more work in the channels themselves, in addition to trying to have rain gardens and other things that can kind of prevent the city runoff. So
bioremediation as well. So it's not just putting there and letting the water go in. You're trying to clean the water before it goes down into the aquifer. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, if you get Reese Baker talking about it, I mean, you will become an optimist. It's amazing. It's amazing to hear him talk about it. But basically, those hydrocarbons that are coming off of our streets that are carcinogenic, and all of these chemicals that William has been talking about, White rot fungus a lot of times has been shown to break down those chemicals and turn them into water and turn them into other usable biological compounds. So we're super excited to be working with Reese on his study to kind of show that breakdown, so that we're not just accumulating pollutants, but we're actually breaking them down and turning them into compounds that can then be taken up by plants and kind of make our urban landscapes more ecologically healthy.
You know, if he's ever done it on a big scale in a big arroyo?
I don't think he does a ton of work in arroyos,
Okay,
he
just
does
water
a,
garden, I mean, rain garden.
I mean, yeah, he's doing a lot of streetscape kind of work at various scales. And I know that there's the Arroyo de los Pinos by his house, he like kind of plays around with a little bit, but I think there are different slightly different factors. I think that, the idea of a rain garden would have to be like slightly modified to work in an arroyo itself. So I don't think he works in those environments quite as much.
Could we talk him
Carl?
into it?
So, Carl, I'll throw in sort of my 2 cents on that, is that by the time it hits the arroyos, stormwater hits the arroyos, it's too late. The time to get it to infiltrate is when the energy is low and you're up near the headwaters or upstream from the arroyos, to trying to keep it from becoming a raging torrent, flash flood in the arroyo. So that's where we focus so much on the upstream sites. They built Cochiti Dam in part to control the floods. We don't want to do that.
Well, that to me is just, it should be part of a flood control management plan. If you expand those, get you guys to do more of those throughout the city, then that helps us in terms of what water we're getting into our area. So, I mean, it really isn't, it becomes a matter of planning. So do you think Reese would come to one of our meetings, maybe in the next meeting, and just talk about what he does?
I'm sure that I could harass him and get him here and tie it to our contract. Yeah, I do want to point out too that again with the Chamisos and the Hondo, it's a little more complicated than just urban stormwater because they are such large tributaries that have their headwaters in the foothills. And with climate change, there's going to be a lot of vegetation dying in the foothills, which is going to expose a lot of soil and reduce the infiltration in the foothills themselves. That has basically nothing to do with city development. So I think it's really important to kind of factor that in to stormwater management in the arroyos and in the foothills, that it's not just parking lots or it's not just developments that's going to be impacting the amount of stormwater, the kind of magnitude of flash floods coming through those arroyos, as my understanding. But I think, it's important to kind of think about those two factors.
Important thing to keep ahead of us in terms of planning. Absolutely, it's reality. Darren just pointed out one of the problems that the city has is the separation between the water department and the wastewater department. It's just organizationally, you look at that and it's silly. And I'm not sure politically it's going to change anytime soon. Go ahead, William.
So the stormwater is even separate from that.
That's true. That's true.
Correct. Which again, okay, and if you thought you were going to get out of a meeting without me bringing it up, goes back to integrated management systems and ISO 14001 and bringing this all together, because even if dealing with their NEPAs going forward and all that, again, EPA policy is all based in those recurring Deming cycles for planning and reevaluation and corrective action and continuous improvement. So You know, and again, there's models for it in communities all across the United States and the world. So it's only going to make more sense as we come into the future that we keep encouraging those entities to get together. And they talk about it in terms of a regional water plan and all this other kind of pie in the sky, again, water banking type stuff. But when it gets down to the wet water, this is what we need to facilitate, is the bringing together of a more integrated and holistic approach to dealing with this. To not do it's not, you know, you could say they were ignorant for a period of time, maybe a few decades ago, and now it starts to become, you have to wonder whether it's not, you know, sinister.
One of the things that's really interesting about the Water Policy Advisory Committee, I can't tell you how many times it comes up that they are completely supportive of a regional water authority. And it's not something I'm sitting there going, hey, let's do this. It's like people who really know or aware, smart guys that are saying this really needs to happen. And that to me, this example of having 3 different entities dealing with water with the city, I just want to pull your hair out, what little hair I have left. Anyway, yeah, this is fascinating. I put together already our agenda for next month. One, we're gonna have Bill Snyder do the hydrology report, which I think will be really pretty interesting. We're gonna ask Jacqueline Beam to attend so she can talk about the well depth monitoring program that the county's undertaking.
Carl, it might be Adeline, but
Okay, we'll get
somebody from
to-
sustainability.
Right. And then if we get Reese, and I really think this little thing that you just mentioned, Maury, about climate change and how that's going to change what's coming down the river, I mean, down the arroyos, is something that we can't just ignore. It's something we need to calculate and understand and appreciate. And from the very top of the of the foothills, we need to start looking at ways that we can slow that water down so it doesn't do the damage. I mean, the damage in La Cienega was pretty serious. I mean, we had an estimated probably between 20 and 25 feet deep, 100 to 150 feet wide swath of water that just came cruising through the area. And who knows how much bigger it might get. Now, again, I think what happened with again, I'm no expert in this area, but with the Santa Fe River and that wetlands area, it really did spread it out. It slowed it down. And by the time it got to the houses in La Cienega and, La Cieneguilla and El Cañon and La Bajada, it really had changed a little bit. So that's probably the only plus thing I can say about that wetlands, just kind of in general. So anyway, anything else today, folks?
Carl, this is Sterling.
Yes.
If you are going to write that letter about flood control,
Yeah.
I think it would be important to point out that there are really good plans in effect. I'm not familiar with the county's flood control plans, but I know I am familiar with the city's flood control strategy and with the work that the Watershed Association has done that folds into that. And so I think it'd be important in your letter to point out that this is not something new, that we have plans on the shelf right now that can be implemented. They're just not being implemented. And that's the reality of flood control. It's particularly important to me because I live on Arroyo Chamisos, and the damage, as you pointed out, from the August of 2018 storm was unbelievable. So anyway, there's plans in place, and it's not as though we're starting from scratch.
Good to hear. I mean, again, this is one of those things where you have bureaucracy that does all the planning, and then all of a sudden it's on the shelf and off we go, we're doing other things. And then here comes the flood again. Oh yeah, we probably should have done some of these things. I mean, basically having worked in government agencies over the years, it's one of those things that kind of drives me nuts, in all honesty. So, William.
So on July 22nd, 2018, we went down, Lois and Catherine Baca and ourselves, we went down to look at the Santa Fe River at San Isidro Crossing. And it was about a 4-foot wall of water, shopping carts, 2x4s. It was this. So we drove down to the County Road 62 bridge after we watched it for a little while. And it took 5 minutes to come down. And I think it was because there was so much junk in the initial wave that it was taking, but it was kind of incredible to be a witness. And, you know, there's that Wabash Cannonball song, listen to the rumble, the mighty roar, you know, and you could hear it. You could kind of feel it on the ground coming down.
Interesting stuff, folks. Yeah. And just the stuff that ends up in the arroyo, that's one of the problems. Now this is a good question. Andy, you may know the answer to this. People who build in arroyos, put their little, equestrian facility or, in the river, who oversees it? Is that the Bureau of Reclamation or the Bureau of Corps of Engineers? Can't hear you.
I got it. It depends on where it is, of course, but generally Army Corps of Engineers is the enforcement agency on so many of those. But the city also, and the county both have enforcement powers in arroyos, depending, again, many arroyos are actually on private property, or I'll say the opposite, private property is on the arroyo, because the arroyos came first. But anyway, so it's not just, an easy one phone call situation.
So if we wanted someone to look at the arroyos in La Cienega, who would we call? Good luck.
Go ahead, William.
Well, I think it might be a task force kind of thing, because the Army Corps of Engineers on Bonanza Creek Road, this one guy diverted the arroyo and they fined him and made him put it back, even though it was on his private property. And it might have been because it's maybe a tributary type arroyo, but
Right.
yeah.
Oh, I believe that it is the Army Corps of Engineers because when I first got elected, I did a tire removal on an arroyo over by Finda del Sendero Road. And we had to go through the Army Corps of Engineers to remove them. So I definitely think it's the Army Corps of Engineers. Anyhow, one other thing I want to mention that I just saw in my email is that there is the New Mexico Rural Summit at the Roundhouse on May 12th and 13th, 2022. And I think that definitely applies to traditional historic communities. The discussion is on infrastructure, education, public safety, economic development, youth, and agricultural support and natural resources.
Who's invited to that?
Pardon?
Who is invited to that?
It was on my New Mexico County, one of their emails. I don't know who's invited. I think Roger Montoya is one of the people heading this up.
That's the Association of Counties?
Yeah, so it's probably on their website.
That's interesting.
Carl, there is an important thing about jurisdiction. Within the city of Santa Fe, I don't know the case in the county, but within the city of Santa Fe, most of the arroyos and most of the length of the major arroyos, even though they are on private property, as Andy indicated, most of them have what the city refers to as drainage easements. And that easement, the existence of that easement, as I understand it, as I understand the law, gives the city the authority to manage the arroyo for flood control and other purposes. So if you run into a wall from somebody saying, well, they're on private property, so you can't do anything, that is not really the case.
Thanks. Okay, anything else today, folks? Yeah, and Felicity sends her apologies. She actually had her car stolen a couple days ago from a dealership where she was having it worked on. And as of today, it was involved. They've recovered the car and it was involved in a crime scene. So she's got all kinds of stuff going on right now. And I'm sure we'll hear the details at some point. But thank you.
Poor
as always.
Felicity, I'm sorry.
Yes, we will. I'll send all condolences. Again, it wasn't the biggest of our groups, but I absolutely enjoy the heck out of these things. I think we share a whole lot of knowledge, and I am bound and determined to create an index so people can look stuff up. And if you have a particular area of interest that you'll be able to look up and say, oh yeah, here's on, the 60th minute of the meeting on September 12th, this is what was discussed, so people, it's really a reference guide. I guess it may be a better way to describe it. So I think there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise, and I will absolutely keep you posted on the planning process. Again, I think we'll probably schedule a Zoom meeting next week, kind of an organizational meeting to just kind of get our ducks in a row and start talking about how we're going to move forward. And certainly, as always, thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for attending. Sterling, you're a great addition to this little group. And as always, my cohorts and buddies that we've been doing this for a while. Thank you all. Tricia, thank you. Maury,
When is the next meeting?
It's the second Thursday in June, and I'll send
Okay.
out a date.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Right. Patricio, thank you as always. Send our best to the friends at the city. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Take care.
Thanks. Have
Bye.
a good one. All right. Bye-bye.